휘었지? 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕코입니다. 와, 오늘도 비가 엄청나게 오고 있어요. 와, 진짜 언제까지 비가 이렇게 올려는지 심히 걱정입니다. 오늘 일단 야간 끝나고 이제 내일부터는 오후 출근이라서 낮밤을 바꿔야 됩니다. 어제 좀 바꾸긴 했지만 너무 피곤해가지고 지금도 너무 피곤하지만 낮잠을 자면은 밤에 잠을 못 자서 낮잠은 최대한 자면 안 됩니다. 일단 스트레칭이랑 팔굽혀펴기 위주로 운동을 하겠습니다.
Florida. It's bringing heavy wind, rain, and rough tides to the state's Atlantic coast, but meteorologists say by the time the storm makes landfall, it could re-strengthen and become a hurricane again. Meteorologist Pedram Yahari joins us with more. You've been watching this. What's the latest?
Yeah, Kim, coming in here, the latest update at the 2 a.m. From the National Hurricane Center talking about this being potentially a Category 1 hurricane within the next 24 hours. And of course, when you look at a storm system of this magnitude, it sits about 65 miles or so just off the coast of Cape Canaveral. Certainly has the potential to strengthen because the Gulf Stream just north of this particular region, and we'll watch this because the steering environment here, we've got a jet stream that is wanting to force the system off towards the east and an area of high pressure that is nudging it back towards the west. And put this together here, of course, the system will parallel the coastline. We think the best bet for landfall would be sometime around 24 hours from right now, into the early morning hours of Tuesday there, into areas around Myrtle Beach or eventually on into parts of southern North Carolina. That would come in either as a strong tropical storm or as a weak hurricane, and really the impacts are not going to be much different here. We know the storm surge threat going to be significant, and the strong winds on the immediate coast, of course, could cause some coastal beach erosion as well. And you'll notice by Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, this park's just off the coast of, say, Long Island, even around New York City, could still be a tropical storm. So we'll watch this carefully, and then beyond that, we see this lose its tropical characteristics as it moves into the Canadian Maritimes. But storm surge threat is always the biggest threat to look at these storms, and you've got to keep in mind Monday is the astronomical high tide when it comes to a full moon being in place. So we factor in a 2 to 4 foot storm surge into, say, Edisto Beach on into Charleston, on top of it being the astronomical high tide into the evening hours of Monday into this region. Charleston, right at 9 p.m., could be about 6¼ feet, while in Wilmington, about 5 feet at 10:30 p.m. So you tack on 2 to 4 feet on top of that, flooding almost certainly going to take place there in historic downtown Charleston this time tomorrow when the storm system closes in on land. And again, the heaviest rainfall also forecast to be across this region. Could see as much as 2 to 4 inches come down before things improve. And when you factor in the heavy rainfall, the gusty winds that could be upwards of 70 miles per hour, that of course brings trees down, and we know power outages, the forecast for that remains widespread, potentially into the Delmarva, much of the state of New Jersey, into areas even including New York City. So Kim, if we get power outages across this region with these strong winds, whether it be tomorrow night or into Tuesday night, this could be a big story here because, of course, the pandemic slows any sort of restoration of power across these areas. We'll watch this carefully moving forward.
Yeah, as you say, so many calamities converging there. Thanks so much, Pedram. And on the other side of the U.S., where the pandemic is also raging, they're dealing with a wildfire. More than 7,000 people have been driven from their homes in Southern California due to this. The U.S. Forest Service says the so-called Apple Fire has scorched more than 20,000 acres or 8,000 hectares. So far, no injuries are reported, and at least one home and 2 other buildings have been destroyed by the fire. California has the nation's highest number of COVID-19 cases, and the evacuation centers are requiring masks and social distancing. So for more on this, let's bring in Lisa Cox. She's the Fire Information Officer for the San Bernardino National Forest. Thanks so much for taking the time in a very busy time there to join us. I understand earlier you weren't exactly able to tell how big it is, but you know it's big, you know it's spreading and fairly fast. What's the latest?
Yeah, so the fire is made significant growth today. We do know that it grew. We just need to do an overnight flight tonight to get an infrared image where exactly the fire has gone today. But it mostly grew in the northern and southeasterly portions or flanks of the fire.
All right, so as a reporter who used to be based in Los Angeles, I've covered plenty of fires in that region. I know how tough the terrain makes it. How big a factor is it in this fire?
Yeah, so we have about 5 factors all kind of coming together here on this fire. So the number one being, as you just referred to, is the terrain. We've got extremely steep, rugged terrain. We have many different drainages that are all kind of intersecting together, and that creates these funneling effects of different wind patterns and creates more erratic fire behavior. And with that, we have very thick brush, including this really flammable ecosystem called chaparral that likes to burn, and it hasn't burned here in a long time. We don't have a lot of fire history in the area.
With the pictures we're seeing there, we're seeing these very strong smoke columns from the fire, quite spectacular. You can actually see them through much of Southern California. How much harder does it make to fight the fire?
Yeah, so yesterday was a prime example of what happens when fire makes its own weather. And we saw a little bit more of that today, but it was really evident yesterday because of that pyrocumulus cloud that appeared above the fire at several thousand feet, tens of thousands of feet, and it could actually be seen from Chinatown in Los Angeles. So when that happens, it's when all those factors come together: fuel, slope, alignment, wind, low humidities, high temperatures, and gusty winds. They all come together, and once the fire gets the head on that with that thick chaparral brush, it creates its own weather system, and it actually creates this updraft of smoke, ash, and flame, and it creates this huge cloud and has a downdraft that actually spreads out in all 360 directions around the fire and creates additional issues like spotting across the fire line.
Speaking of additional issues, fighting a fire is hard enough, let alone during a pandemic. How does COVID affect the firefighting efforts and also the residents who may have to evacuate and take shelter?
Yeah, so worldwide pandemic, that's a whole nother layer of challenges that firefighters and residents are already dealing with. But so far, we've had no injuries on the fire, and that's great news. And so far, I could say we're doing pretty well, faring pretty well, and with all the protective measures that we're taking, things are going great.
All right, well, good luck out there. Thanks so much for joining us, Lisa Cox, for the San Bernardino National Forest. We appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, President Trump puts a failed Defense Department pick in a new role, so we'll find out what Democrats in the U.S. Congress have to say about it. And Microsoft says it's still in talks to buy TikTok, but it's not clear whether that will ease President Trump's security concerns. Coming up after the break.
Air quality update in association with Copernicus, Europe's eyes on Earth. Quality update in association with Copernicus, Europe's eyes on Earth.
My name is Emmanuel Ahimiego. I'm the project manager of Bandana Kaba Road. We don't need to import anything that we need on the road. They are all locally available materials. So people from the community, they end up becoming suppliers. I think it has brought life back to the communities. And to be able to lead those people to achieve something worthwhile, something that is of value, I feel extremely proud.
Lingås. I'm 27 years old and I live in the northern part of Norway. I work as a counselor for UCPA, or User Controlled Personal Assistance. And being disabled myself, I also receive that services. But at first, I was worried to catch the virus. Being disabled and my disorder, my immune system is low. So if I get the virus, I might not fight it off as well as others. In this type of crisis or pandemic, as COVID-19 has presented, the company that provides my assistance services has helped me a lot. When the restrictions came, I didn't allow anyone inside my house except my assistants. I know every one of them as well has restricted their contact with others. They've done things to help me in that way, and they deserve to be acknowledged for that.
This month, a special Inside the Middle East. Visit the largest museum of its kind, dedicated to one civilization. See Tutankhamun as you've never seen him before, up close and personal. The Grand Egyptian Museum and its artifacts spanning millennia.
We thought we should build the largest museum in the world. Cairo will be the city of museums.
Inside the Middle East, this weekend on CNN.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. We need to be 6 feet apart when we argue.
This is the closest we've been in years.
Microsoft says it's still discussing a possible purchase of TikTok. That follows President Trump's threat Friday to ban the popular video app from operating in the U.S. TikTok is owned by a Chinese startup. Sunday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo repeated the administration's security concerns about TikTok and other Chinese software companies. Pompeo wouldn't say whether a Microsoft purchase would ease those misgivings. Delaney Jokos is in Johannesburg, South Africa. To analyze this, first off, let's back up a bit. I mean, does this signal that the Trump administration may be backing off its threat to ban TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is going to be a big game changer and a big move for Microsoft and, of course, for the Trump administration. You've got to keep in mind that President Trump had floated the idea of banning TikTok in the past. Then on Friday saying that he's willing to activate executive orders to do so. And then we heard that Microsoft is currently in acquisition talks with TikTok, looking to purchase its US, Canadian, Australian, as well as operations in New Zealand. Now, we don't know whether this would actually change the Trump administration's view, but what we do know is the banning of TikTok in the US while Microsoft is having acquisition talks with TikTok certainly could derail discussions. In the meantime, we know Microsoft wants to have some kind of speedy resolution to this. They're talking about the 15th of September. That is an interesting move. It's all about national security here. A US-based company like a giant like Microsoft wanting to buy a Chinese-owned company could, of course, move the needle here. And remember that a Chinese-owned company would have to acquiesce to any request by the Chinese government to hand over data. That's where the national security issue comes in. Now, ByteDance, which is, of course, the parent company of TikTok, came out with a statement over the weekend and saying that it's committed to becoming a global company. And in this process, we are faced with all kinds of complex and unimaginable difficulties, including a tense international political environment. We still adhere to the vision of globalization and continue to increase investment in markets around the world, including China, to create value for users around the world. Also important to note that the TikTok CEO is a former Disney executive. ByteDance wanted to show that it has nothing to hide, that it's playing open cards here. But remember that this isn't a problem only endemic to the United States wanting to ban TikTok. Its biggest market, China, of course, is an important market, but then it was India, and India banned TikTok. Australia has cited concerns about national security, so too has South Korea. So it'll be an interesting one to look at because around 2 billion people have downloaded the application. In the US, 172 million people.
Wow. All right. Well, listen, we'll follow this story with great interest. Thank you so much, Delaney Jokos in Joburg. Appreciate it. The Trump administration is placing a controversial Pentagon pick into another similar role even after his nomination failed. Retired General Anthony Tata was President Trump's choice for a top defense post, but his nomination hearing on Thursday was canceled amid bipartisan opposition. CNN's Ryan Brown explains.
Retired Brigadier General Anthony Tata has been put into a senior policy post at the Pentagon despite his nomination for another post collapsing last week under Senate scrutiny. Now, Tata had made controversial comments unearthed by CNN's K-File team on a wide range of issues, accusing a former CIA director of plotting to kill President Trump, calling President Obama a terrorist leader, and making comments that many viewed as Islamophobic. Now, Tata has been working as a senior advisor at the Pentagon since April. The details of that role have not been revealed. The Pentagon has declined to offer any details about what he's actually been doing, but he will now be placed into a position that is normally Senate confirmed. Now, he is on a temporary, technically acting basis, but the move has been slammed by Democrats on Capitol Hill, with the top Democrat on the Senate Armed Service Committee saying that the efforts to skirt their confirmation process were destabilizing and an insult to U.S. troops and the American people. Ryan Brown, CNN, Washington.
U.S. lawmakers and White House officials will resume negotiations in the coming hours to try to agree on another stimulus plan. Now, a key sticking point is the extension of the $600 weekly unemployment benefit that expired last week. Republicans see it as a disincentive for some Americans to go back to work, and they want to cut it to $200 a week, and they want states to move toward benefits based on a percentage of a worker's wages.
The fact is, they put on the floor the end of this week in the Senate $200. So when you say, well, you end up doing the 600, they have no support for that in their party. We are unified in our support for the $600. They are in disarray.
Mark Meadows and I will be back there every day until we reach an agreement. We understand there's a need to compromise, but on the other hand, there's also a big need to get kids into school, get people back to jobs, and keep the economy open and keep people safe.
Now, for many Americans, that $600 weekly bonus benefit was vital. It helped pay the rent, and with some eviction moratoriums ending, they worry that could end up putting them out on the streets. Paul Rickaman has one family's story.
Tension on the streets of Los Angeles this weekend, economic worry, people wondering how they're going to make ends meet. The $600 supplemental paycheck from the federal government gone, and looming on the horizon, how to pay rent or make up for rent that has not been paid. There is a moratorium on evictions in the city of Los Angeles, but in the state, some other eviction moratoriums may go away soon. We talked to the Alvarez family. They haven't been able to pay rent in 3 months, and they are greatly concerned about what's going to happen down the road when someone comes to collect that rent check.
We need real help, like, to cancel the rent, because it's...
Vivimos con la presión de no tener para pagar la renta.
Because we live with the pressure that we can't pay the rent. And as soon as this is over, I know they want us to, like, repay the months that we didn't pay. And how are we supposed to do that when we could barely make for the month we're living in?
But also at play here, landlords, many of them in Southern California, relying on rental income to make their living. And one community activist said this is all such a double-edged sword.
What we need to do is we need to not only explore, but we need to act boldly to be able to put in programs in place that will not only protect the renters, but also the landlords. We understand that. Most of the renters that I speak with, if not all of them, you know, they want to pay the rent. But if that's not happening, you know, again, the landlords will also suffer, especially the mom and pop's landlords. And that worries me a lot.
And there are a number of bills working their way through the legislature that can give relief to both landlords as well as renters. Stay tuned on that. California reckoning with both the COVID-19 pandemic and its very serious consequences on health